This week in Louisiana agriculture, millions of dollars are at stake as the Greater Baton Rouge Port Commission decides who will operate the grain elevator serving many farmers across south central Louisiana.
I'm A.J. Sabine here at the Port of Baton Rouge. I'll tell you why dredging has stopped along the Mississippi River and how that will impact agriculture.
Will white gold be king again this year? I'm Kristen Oakes, and we'll find out later on.
Hello, I'm Michael Danna. Thanks so much for joining us. At a time when the state is facing a massive budget crisis, is there a way to generate more revenue for Louisiana without the burden falling to you, the taxpayer? Well, the Port of Greater Baton Rouge might have just such an opportunity. It's something Louisiana farmers say could benefit them and the local communities supported by agriculture. This is the Cargill Grain Facility at the Port of Greater Baton Rouge. Under its current contract, the company has paid the state $250,000 a year in a base lease to operate the complex. But as the lease on the facility comes up for renewal, another player, Louis Dreyfus Commodities, is proposing to pay the state $1 million a year, plus other incentives that could top $2 million. Dreyfus also plans to make capital improvements that over 30 years could top $100 million. And that has driven up the price of real estate here along the Mississippi River. Cargill, under its new proposal, also plans to commit millions of dollars to capital improvements. However, some area grain farmers have had issues with Cargill over the years, like the facility shutting down mid-afternoon during the height of harvest, as well as reducing basis prices, part of the cash price farmers receive for their crop.
Ultimately, the capacity that we have in Port Allen is critical to a timely harvest here. So when we have hours of 9 to or 8 to 5, 8 to 3, whatever, and usually that happens when we're beginning harvest and it's not that busy, and when we're ending harvest. But still, just because we're tailing off or beginning, the farmers that are still in the field, it's just as critical to them as it would be during the gut slide of harvest.
The Greater Baton Rouge Port Commission must now decide whether to allow Cargill to continue to operate the facility or accept the proposal of Louis Dreyfus. Both proposals are in the tens of millions of dollars, far more than the $250,000 annual base contract Cargill pays now. But the real benefit to farmers is that greater competition could result in better prices for their commodities and more money circulating in the local economy.
So we expect a lot of activity, and I think both Dreyfus and Cargill are expecting tremendous growth in this activity.
This Week in Louisiana Agriculture requested an interview with Executive Director of the Port of Greater Baton Rouge, Jay Hardman. However, by email, the Port declined our request. The email said the Port would provide a written press release concerning the Commission's decision after the Port Commission's meeting on the matter Tuesday, February 15th. Meanwhile, Commissioner Strain told This Week in Louisiana Agriculture he's received assurances from Hardman and Port Commission Chair Larry Johnson that no vote would be taken until after an economic study on how both proposals would impact local grain producers. That study, Strain said, will be conducted by the LSU Ag Center with assistance from the Louisiana Department of Economic Development.
The Port Commission has given me their word, and they also gave the word to Timmy Teeple in the governor's office. They told me that they would hold off on a vote until this analysis has been done, and we've had an opportunity to basically weigh in and take a look at it and make recommendations.
What if they do vote?
What if they do vote? They are an independent body. They are an independent body that they do have that authority, but they have given us their word, and of course, in our circles, your word is your bond.
Officials with the LSU Ag Center tell us it could take up to 3 weeks to complete an economic impact study. Now again, the Greater Baton Rouge Port Commission is scheduled to meet February 15th to examine more closely the Cargill and Dreyfus proposals. To tell us more about this story, we now turn to Neil Melancon. And Neil, I think that no matter what happens with those proposals, the port is certainly going to benefit, but what happens to Louisiana farmers as a result of this whole thing is still really up in the air.
It really is, Mike, and the port will certainly benefit, but it's not just so straightforward as to which group pays the most money. And joining us now is David Bollinger, a grain marketing specialist with the Louisiana Farm Bureau Marketing Association. And David, I guess really this is a tale of two cities, or a tale of two plans actually, one with Cargill and one with Dreyfus and their plans for the Port of Baton Rouge. Explain a little bit about these two plans, these two futures that could happen to the port.
Well, it's been a long process, going back over a year here, and we finally got final proposals that we're looking at. And there's some pretty good differences in it. I think from the standpoint of monies for the port and everything, I think it's a win-win there. I think we're going to see some big increases there in the form of leases, a lot of potential capital investment in the case of Cargill, a lot of, I think, more concrete capital investment in the form of Louis Dreyfus here. And I think when you look at that capital investment, I think it tells a tale of the differences in how the port would be operated or the grain facility would be operated. In Dreyfus's case, they're seeking to make this their primary export facility down here at the Gulf, where they have no presence at the moment here, and whereas Cargill has 2 other elevators besides Port Allen here. So in order to gain the efficiencies that they need there to compete in the export market, they're going to have to do almost basically a total remake of a lot of the capacity at the grain elevator, and we're talking about eventual capital investments in excess of $75 million there, could top $100 million there, depending on how things go once, if they are in the seat there. What we see in these proposals here is a chance to take Port Allen back to its place as a primary export facility, the same type of facility that we saw operated under Cargill for many years, but that changed back in around 2000 when Cargill bought out Continental, and I think the whole business model for Port Allen changed. We want an exporter there who's competing for all the bushels here because they need them for their program. Dreyfus will not have a whole lot of origination within the country. This is going to be key for them, to buy almost every bushel they can find down in south central Louisiana.
Sure. I guess the key issue is the vision for the future for this, and I guess talk to me about, with you guys in marketing, what your vision is for the Port of Baton Rouge as it relates to the culture of farming, really, that will support this idea of helping farmers and aiding them, being a partner with Louisiana agriculture rather than just cold mechanical business operations.
Well, we're never sentimental about this. The grain business is highly competitive and everything. What we hoped to accomplish when this process first began was to find a tenant that, because of their situation, they would be the best fit for the Port Allen facility. We may have found that in Dreyfus, at least looking at the leases and everything. So what we hope to see there in the future is one thing: a highly competitive tenant at that grain elevator who needs Louisiana grain, needs every bushel they can buy to supplement the other grain that they'll be bringing in by barge and rail from the Midwest in order to load ships. Panamax vessels, that's the largest ship that can go through the Panama Canal, most of it heading for Asia, a lot of it into China and everything. That's what we want here, and that's what we hope we'll get if Dreyfus should win that lease.
Big business. I guess we need to talk briefly, in 25 words or less, sum up the recent USDA report speaking all this grain. This is all happening at a time when grain market prices are shooting through the roof, are they not?
They are, and there was nothing on this report, I think, to put a blanket on this market here. The big surprise or the big change was in corn. Carryouts were reduced, and most of that came about because the ethanol usage was up, corn for ethanol usage. So that's really the only thing. There were virtually no changes in soybeans or wheat, so I think they've been following the corn today. Keep in mind, the big question out there is U.S. acreage for 2011. If corn prices go up and start to, in the mind of the market, pull acreage away, well, soybeans have got to follow. And that's what we're going to continue to see until we start to put, I think, a figure on acreage for 2011.
Interesting times, interesting times. All right, that is David Bollinger, a grain marketing specialist with the Louisiana Farm Bureau Marketing Association. So, Mike, even though there's not a lot of ships moving right now, there's a lot going on at the port these days.
Thanks, Neil.